Hey, what's up? I'm Kirk of Effectatron, and today we're going to kind of revisit an old tutorial I did from, believe it or not, 4 years ago. So first off, thank you all for believing in me and supporting me across these years. There's a lot more to come, don't worry. I'm really enjoying it. I love teaching on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. So 4 years ago, I did a tutorial in R20 where I used Redshift to create a photorealistic floor, basically teaching texture maps and where to plug them in and stuff for beginners. I'm kind of revisiting that because Redshift changed a lot, as well as just, I've changed and learned a lot. So what I've done here, what I'm doing today is I'm going to teach you how to take it from almost there to that little extra bit that makes it look photorealistic. Okay, so we're not going to go over every texture. I do have a version of that available. It's on Patreon, Gumroad, and Teachable. And it is going to be available, and it goes in depth into setting up the entire scene, our lighting, our materials, why texture maps are the way they are, why, the difference between a color map and a grayscale map and a normal map, and how those grayscale maps get translated into values and how to control those values and what those values mean. So we go way, way, way more in depth into that. And we also go really in depth into all materials in the Mind and Motion workshop, chapter 3, the materials chapter, which is very heavy, where we pretty much cover probably 90% of the nodes in depth. So super cool. So we're going to go ahead and learn how to create this and really just take this scene and add that little bit of extra finesse into it to take it to that photorealistic scene. So what I want to say is, let's go ahead and start a new scene here. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my lighting and everything how it is, and I'm just going to delete my material on my floor, and we can just, start from there, right? Cool. So this is what it looks like by default. And we're going to create a nice realistic wood floor. So, I always get started and I have these ideas and I see these renders and inspiration and stuff. And I say, okay, I want to make a ton of really cool photorealistic stuff. I want to make a cyberpunk alleyway. I want to make a mountainscape. I want to make a river scene. I want to make this, a jungle, a forest, a field, like all these crazy big scenes. And the more, you learn and the more you realize, the more you start to realize that you need to really learn. You got to dial it in. You got to hone it all the way back in. And it almost sounds counterintuitive and simple and kind of like insulting a little bit. It's like, but I'm going to challenge you is when you want to learn photorealistic stuff, you've got to keep your scene super, super simple. Okay, so I'm going to challenge you. If you want to create something realistic, do something like this scene, which is you have a floor, you have a wall, and you have a ball. Doesn't get much simpler than two squares and a sphere, right? But you'll realize that you can spend a lot of time on two squares and a sphere and get pretty frustrated or pretty excited about what you can create. And so putting that boundary on yourself is really going to let you focus in and not get overwhelmed with how much you need to do to make the scene look good, like you do on an environmental scene or something like that. So if you're a beginner or you really want to just take it to the next level, I think this tutorial is going to help. Also, the more in-depth tutorial will help for sure. But this is kind of the approach I take to everything in the Mind and Motion class as well. Challenging yourself to focus on those few things, just really, it sounds simple, but it lets you focus on those few things that need that focus. And you're not distracted by saying, okay, I need a plant, I need my plant to look like this, I need this kind of plant, I need this kind of rock, I need this kind of scene, this kind of that, this kind of this. And just like, okay, does this need a little bit more scratches on it? Is it too shiny? Like, those are the things. And so once you realize how to do that in a very, very small scale controlled thing, that's kind of how it works with big scenes, is you just have a bunch of little bitty scenes like that. So starting off by learning that is going to really help you out in the long run. All right, so that's my challenge to you. Make a very simple scene, make it look photorealistic, post it in the Discord. All right, I want to see what you guys make. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get this. So I want to make sure that I use something that everybody has access to. Now I have a video about 20 free texture sites. I don't know why I keep pointing. This is where everything is. About cool texture sites that have really cool free resources. And this one is cgbookcase.com. And we're going to use Parquet Flooring 5. And we're going to use the metalness and roughness value workflow, and we're going to do it at 4K. So we're going to download that, and we're going to open up a new material here. Now I've got a button set up that allows me to have a material that has all my favorite things in there already. I set that up in the Mind and Motion workshop. But let's go ahead and just create a new material, and we're going to throw that material on our plane. And then we are going to open up that file that we just downloaded and extracted, and we have all these texture maps in there. Now we've got 5 texture maps. We're going to select them all, drag and drop them in. Boop. Yes. This is just going to copy them to the project place. There we go. Cool. So we've got, and we're going to, again, I'm going to kind of fly through these kind of quick because I go more in depth into them into another tutorial that is available. Check the link below. All right. So color. We're going to grab all of these, and we're going to change them all to raw. And then we're going to go height, and that's going to go straight into displacement, texture text map. And roughness is going to go into roughness. AO into Redshift Standard, geometry, overall tint, and normal map into bump map into tangent space normal, and then the set to 0.3 there. Boom. Okay. Now, refresh. Looks pretty crappy. Our displacement obviously needs to work. So in order to add displacement to our object, we have to right click our plane. First off, you got to make sure you have geometry in your plane. Because this is what it looks like right now, which is decent, but it doesn't quite look right. So we need to right click and go to render tags, Redshift object tag. And underneath that, geometry, override, tessellate, and enable displacement. I'm going to choose our minimum edge length and set it down to 2. Again, I'm going kind of fast, I know. But that's going to get our floor looking pretty good. Now, one thing I want to say is a lot of people get frustrated with Redshift tessellation and the fact that once they have something displaced and they move their camera around, they have to wait for that to recalculate every time, and it's super annoying. Well, really, once you get it set up, you don't have to. So you can see our displacement might be a little intense, because if this is what the floor looked like in my house, I'd just be tripping all the time. So let's go ahead and open this up, and we're going to go down here to displacement, and we're going to change 2 things. We're going to change the new range min and the new range max from -0.5 to 0.5 down here, like that. It's going to keep the same ratio, but it's going to lower everything down. And it's going to be weird and look all crazy, but don't worry about that. And we're going to take the actual scale of this and bring it down to like 0.3 and hit refresh. When it looks all crazy, you just hit refresh until it starts to look right. You can see it says forcing render time tessellation. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And there we go. Much, much more subtle and much, much better and realistic looking. Now that we have this how we want it, and I don't want to sit here and be like, okay, I want to move my camera angle, and then like, oh, I have to wait for it to tessellate again. All you got to do is hit this snowflake. When you hit that snowflake, it locks in the tessellation. You want to do this once you have it how you like it. Okay, and it's going to bake it one more time, and as long as you don't hit stop on the play button here, we are now going to avoid that lag. So now that we have it baked in, we can still move our camera around and get that responsive, fast time that we're used to. It doesn't have to redo the tessellation. So once you get the displacement set up, click that button, freezes it up for you, so you don't have to wait for that every time. Now, this looks pretty good with our lighting and stuff. Again, we set all that up in the other tutorial, but we just want to take it and add a little bit more realism to it, because right now it's just a little too polished. So let's go ahead and just add some scuffs and scratches to this. That's just going to take it to the next level. Okay, so open up our material, and what I want to do is I'm going to open up the asset browser here, and I'm going to go to media, and I'm going to type in imperfections. And inside of here, I'm going to go down, and I want to find some scuffs and scratches. So I want to find shoe scuffs first, and then scratches second. Okay, so we'll go ahead and grab something like this. It says fingerprints, but I think that will work for like scuffs on the floor. Not too bad. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use an OSL shader that I have saved here. And I talk about where to find this and stuff in the in my video about fixing repetitive tiles. And this is just a really, really great resource. We're going to copy that and bring that into here. And basically what this is going to do is, if I have this, material here on my scene, we'll go ahead and solo that. And you can see how it's just kind of on there. And I say, oh, I want these all to be a little smaller. So I would like scale them up to like 5 and 5, which is basically like tiling. And then you're going to realize, you know, I like that, but now it's like creating this repetitive tiling, but I like the size of these scuffs. Let's say, for example, well, that's where the hex tile coordinates comes in. We go to offset, UV remap offset, and we can come in here and basically we can set this back to 1 and 1, set this to then tile 5 times, do some blending. We'll scroll down. We can add some noise to this, some scale. We can add some rotation, variance, and steps, and some size variance as well. Change the seed. And now all of a sudden, it's going to look a lot less tiled. You see how it's like kind of hard to see the pattern now. Even though it's the exact same material or texture map tiled 5 times, but we don't really want it to be tiled 5 times. I just want to show off that the OSL does that. We're going to say like 2 times. I think that looks pretty good. Yes, some of that, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the way that's looking. So then what I like to do is I like to control the contrast of this. And I like to add a ramp to do that. Some people do scalar ramps. I like color ramps because it just makes sense in my head. So we're going to plug that in, input, alt input, and then solo our ramp. And basically everywhere that's white is going to be really matte and on our reflection roughness. And everywhere that's black is going to be shiny. And I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to tighten this up a little by bringing this knot down just to add a little more wear and tear. Not that far, but just like that maybe. Not too bad. And again, all the settings in here, we can take this noise off. I really just want to have a little bit of variance in the scale and rotation. We can crank that up all the way. 360 rotation steps. That's good. We just want to create some randomness here, right? So that's all I'm doing. The number values here don't matter that much. Just want to make sure that we're breaking up that tiling. So what I'm going to do now is grab this ramp and plug it into our center material. And this is where we're going to go into the coat map. Because for floor, we have our wood floor that we downloaded, which I think looks really good for a floor. But really, you know, most floors have a finish on them, and that finish always has some wear and tear on it from, you know, being lived in, which I think is what makes things look photoreal, is when they look like things you see in the real world, which are never perfect, but they're never like, it's really easy to get carried away and make things look like super scuffed up and damaged and wrecked because it's cool, but it doesn't look right. So we're going to go here to the coat, and we're going to plug this into the coat, and we want to make a subtle adjustment to this. And we're going to go ahead and put this on the roughness, and we're going to unsolo it. And for the roughness here, you know, you're not going to see anything happen because we don't have any coat. So we have to actually add our coat on here. Again, we'll, you know, refresh this because our displacement's being stupid. It's going to bake that and cook it in. If you want to, you could turn off displacement during this process and turn it on again at the end, which might be what we do here in a bit, but we'll let it see if it works here real quick. There we go. All right. So we don't have any coat. It looks good, but we don't have any like scuffs or anything like that. So we've got this map. Let's come in, and we just want to add a little bit onto this. So we're going to go ahead and take our coat, crank it all the way up to 1. And we're going to see what that does. And you can see already that it adds on this extra layer of kind of natural grime and lacquer on there because of the way that we've set up our texture map. So if we take this off, it's just going to be like pretty shiny. Right? So if we put this like coat layer just on top of everything, it's just really shiny. And our wood floors doesn't need to be that like super shiny. We want it to have kind of a natural look. So that's why we're going to hook that up there. Now, on top of that, we're actually going to come down here to our coat, and I like to change the IOR up to like 2. Because I think that like vinyl, like lacquer, or whatever you want to put on these floor, like the finish, is always a little bit thicker than like, you know, clear plastic or anything like that. Like, I don't know what the best example would be. But I think it has a little bit higher IOR. We'll turn up our IOR a little bit here to 2, just so it's a little, I think that's just kind of a better reflection quality of what we're looking for here. Now we need to add some bump, because whenever you add a coat layer on top of something that has bump, it kind of overrides it a little bit because, it kind of goes like a gloss on top. So we need to add another layer in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here to my imperfections, go to media, and type in imperfections once again. And again, you can use whatever texture maps or grunge maps, scratch maps you want. These are all just available to you, so use them if you want. So we're going to go ahead and grab some scratches. So like this, scratches 4. I'm going to click and drag that in, and we're going to isolate that so we can see how that will be applied on our material here. And that is too big, right? Those scratches are too intense. So let's copy our hex tile. Again, UV offset, UV remap, offset. And now we'll see what that looks like. We might need to do it a little bit different, but we'll see. That's pretty good. Let's make it maybe tile 3 times. So we'll change the grid to 3. Those scratch sizes look a little bit better. And again, add a ramp for that control. So click and drag input, alt input, isolate that. And I really just want, I want to hone it in just a little bit more so that we don't have like scratches everywhere, but we just have a little. We'll pull this down and pull this up. So we have like a little more intense scratches, but we still have some gaps here that aren't going to be scuffed. We'll pull that up just a smidge. And they're very small, minute changes. Pull it down. Maybe like that. A little bit less. We'll try that because that might be too scuffed, but we'll see. And then what we need to do is, of course, add a bump map here. And again, everywhere that's white is what we're going to tell it to cut in, and everything that's black is not going to get any changes. So we're going to grab that, plug it into the bump map, texture input, to make sure it's at the height field, and we're going to change this to -1. And we're going to grab that and plug that into the Redshift Standard Material coat, and the coat map or layer has its own bump map. So we're going to plug that in there. So now we have a bump map that's on our like wood floor underneath, and a bump map that's just on our coat layer on top. And so we'll refresh because this place is being weird. And there you go. Now you can see we have these nice little scuffs and bumps just right on top. And if it was my house, I'd probably add just like maybe like a big, maybe a thick layer of dog hair back here. I swear, our corgi shed so much. But yeah, so this is like too intense, but you can tell it's working and it looks pretty good. So let's make it less intense. Well, let's take our bump and just dial it back to like -0.2. And that should make it a little more subtle. It should pop a little less. We want it to be obvious, but not obvious at the same time. We want it to be new, but old, contemporary, but classic. And that's too subtle, and we've lost it now. And sometimes you have to be careful that your denoiser isn't removing it. That's one big thing. But let's go ahead and grab this and say like -0.4. You can see as it was coming in a little clearer, we started to see it a little more there. So that's kind of it. When I make these adjustments, I always like to do like really drastic adjustments and then dial it back, just to make sure that I'm affecting the right things. This looks pretty good, but that's too scuffed. I think we're going to go back to -0.22, just for fun. Why not? 22. And that should give us a really nice result. And if you need to, when you're using very small details on scratches and stuff, I would say instead of using optics for denoising, use Altus single. All right? Because it's just going to allow you to keep more detail. It's going to take a little bit longer to render, but it's just going to look slightly better come render time and keep some of those smaller details. So now what we can do is actually hit render on this. We can probably add some depth of field, but we've got that going on already. Good. Click, focus, and maybe keep it at that. Nice. All right. So we'll go ahead and hit render on this and take a look at it. And you may notice as it starts to go that it maybe our noise or our scuffs were a little too intense. Now, Altus single doesn't do what optics does, and it kind of waits for it to be completely done to go on, so while you're rendering, you may notice that your scuffs and stuff are maybe just a little too intense, We'll let it finish because we'll let the Alta single get on there and smooth it out because maybe it'll fix it. But if not, we just need to dial that back down, but we'll see. All right, now that Alta single has got on there, I kind of feel like our bump is too intense. So one thing I want to say is let's just go in there and let's just take it down even further, like negative 0.1. Okay. I think that'll help. And then another thing I want to note is inside of our plane here, I have it set to 1 and 3 because when this came in, all the squares were a little short and I wanted them to be longer. So I've tiled the V up to 3. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that in the YouTube version of this. So there it is. So let's go ahead and render that again and we'll take a look at this one more time. All right, so there we go. That looks much nicer. And I really think just adding that little bit of scuffs and scratches to that and that bump just really took it to the next level of looking photoreal. So it doesn't look bad. I wouldn't say that's like a damaged wood floor or anything like that. It just looks like a natural wood floor. Now, maybe our displacement is just still slightly too high. So maybe I'd come in here and lower that down maybe to like 0.2. And that's really what the whole process is going to be. When you want to do photoreal and realistic, you just want to start dialing things back because when you're building it, you want it to be very noticeable and like you're like, okay, that's working, right? You want it to be obvious. But then by the end of it, you want to start dialing everything back so that you're like, yeah, it's there. It's there. And that's it. Like you want it to be there, but you don't want it to be obvious it's there. That kind of thing. So if you want to, you could, get rid of denoising or whatever. We'll just use optic single on here and we'll hit render and let that go one last time and we should be good. Nice. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Then of course you come in here and do some post effect stuff that we, really makes it pop. We cover that in the tutorial as well that's available. But thank you all so much for watching. If you want to know, more little quick tips like this, I know this wasn't like super fast, but I just can't help myself with teaching sometimes. So one thing to focus, just make sure, did I do this in this tutorial? I don't remember, but add a figure to your scene for scale. And that's just going to make sure that you are building things in the right scale. So like make sure you have like your figures are a really good thing. So it's a human-sized person and that's right, person-sized person. And it's just going to make sure that your texture and stuff is to scale because when you're doing stuff that's photorealistic, scale is super, super important. So we want to make sure that our planks aren't giant or anything and everything's looking pretty good. I made sure to mention this in the other tutorial. I wanted to make sure I mentioned it in this. So making sure you have that figure there for scale, is very important. And then again, if you want to learn more about the lighting setup and everything and the post effects and all of that stuff and plugging in all the PBRs and why they are the way they are and learn more about them and PBR workflow, check out the tutorial link below. I really think we did add a little bit of photorealism to it just with those slight imperfections. So again, that's what I challenge you to do. Take a small scene, focus on that, make that look real, and realize that everything is a piece of the puzzle. Doesn't matter how great your materials are. If you don't have the lighting for it, they're not going to look right. Doesn't matter how great your lighting is. If you don't have the materials for it, it's not going to look right either. And then if you have great lighting and materials, but you don't have your camera composition and colors and stuff set up, well, then it's still not going to look that great either. So everything is a piece of the puzzle. There's a lot to learn. Take baby steps. That's it. What about Bob? Had it right. Take baby steps. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below what you guys want to learn next. See you next time.